how do we provide surprise and delight for our clients? It's about creating this outsized value for someone else. Let's help people access this new wealth that's potentially in their lives. It's pretty compelling and meaningful to a lot of people. And that has such a heartfelt purpose for me in sync with my values, which is tied to my identity.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. This is a place where we come together to connect advisors and professional consultants who are challenging status quo. These are people who do things differently and have chosen to pursue a path that is more authentic, courageous, and focused on impact so that they can create more value for their clients and their community. I'm your host today. My name is Michelle Sorgaroli, and I am being joined by David Babakaiff. So what we're going to be discussing today is David's story. Now, a little bit about David. David is the regional partner for Alair Homes, and he leads up the Vancouver franchise, which happens to be North America's fastest growing franchise, which is kind of exciting. And David obviously knows a thing or two about growth. I've known David to be a person who is an incredibly strategic visionary at scale, who has a very strong commitment to client service and creating value for his people, whether they be customers, clients, or even the community at large. He has a very strong orientation around transparency and integrity. And he's a devoted family man who prides himself on building beautiful homes. And they have lots of awards to validate that as well. So I'm welcoming David today. David, thank you so much for joining us. I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm very excited about our conversation.
Thanks, Michelle. It's an honor. I always enjoy when we get together. That was such a nice introduction. I feel like we're done already.
Right? We got this. No, it's beautiful. So what I'd love to hear, David, is yes, I know that you have always prided yourself on the quality of your work, and you've always talked about how important that is in terms of both reputation, but also personal sense of who you are and what you stand for. I'd love to hear a little bit more. Like, I know you started with Alair in 2009. Is that right?
That's right.
Alair Homes. What I'd love to hear is tell us a little bit about your journey from how you got there. Like, how did you end up at Alair from, your university days when you were skiing?
Yeah. So, one of the, to me, it's kind of like a funny thing. When I sit down with my wife and I look back at our history and I go, do you remember when, at a certain time we were imagining where we're going to be 5 years from now? It seems to be 5 years is the cutoff for me. Like, whatever I think I'm going to be doing in 5 years, it's nowhere near what I'm doing in 5 years because things end up changing so much and developing so much. I think it's just, I like growth and I like developing things and creating. It's really just being creative. Like people look at sometimes business as maybe a dry thing or a systematic thing, which of course there's systems, but to me it's like art. It's like painting. It's like that flower behind you in your background. It's like this is it's my art, sort of, right?
I love that. I actually say that as well. That
so it feels that
your
way.
work is your craft, which is your art.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's so true. I love that. You said about 5 years. 5 years is your cutoff. So what do you think happens for you from the beginning of that 5 years to the end of the 5 years, such that it is so dramatically different from what you had originally thought it might be?
Yeah, interesting. It's a combination of, I think, opportunities that come up and maybe challenges that come up, like both those things, right? So recently I took a course and studied a book you might know about, 10x is easier than 2x by
I'm familiar with that book.
Dr.
It's a great
Ben
one.
Hardy.
Yeah.
And and I mean that's where we met, of course.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
So when I read that, it made a lot of sense to me, because when I look back at my life, it was some version of that, except it wasn't intentional with understanding and labels. But I could look back and go, oh yeah, that's been happening in my life, but a lot more haphazardly than maybe I would want it to. So I think that I'll go. There's so many stories. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur since my early days. So when initially when we got married and had our kids a long time ago, and they're 2-3 years old, I had a secure job with the government, the Ministry of Highways, and I couldn't stand it because what I did yesterday and last week is what I was planned to do, for the next, 39 years.
Right.
And I couldn't handle that.
Oh
So,
my.
so, I said to my wife, it's time for a change. I can't do this. And she goes, okay, well, let's just move to a different city then. So we upped and moved to Victoria at that time and just started entrepreneuring, which was way harder than I thought it would be.
So
Uh,
curious question here,
yeah.
because you said, you couldn't do that anymore. And it's an interesting word. You said, I just started entrepreneuring. And I think a lot of us think that way, right? We think, oh, I'm just going to be an entrepreneur. And then we discover that it's a lot harder than we anticipate. What helped you with the courageous leap to go from that secure job into the entrepreneurial journey?
Well, good question. You know what? I think it's my partner, my wife, honestly, because
Oh,
recently I read some stuff that goes, one of the best investments you can make, of course, is your partner, and not really thinking of it in those terms back when, but if she had said, no way, we need to stay around parents and around my, family and this and that, you're going to figure it out here, I would have.
right.
But she was encouraging to, for me to be the best man I could be, and that seemed like the way to go. So I think that has a lot to do with it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
interestingly. And
mm-hmm.
then I'm I am ambitious and I think just accomplishment driven. So I start something and then I learn and improve and learn and adjust. And if I whatever I'm starting, if it doesn't go out of business before I make it, then if it goes out, which there was a running joke with my boys when they were, I think, around 10 or so, because I had this like big Rolodex of all my business cards of the things I started that never really made it to a business level, but I
Right.
started them and tried, right, and I kept all these cards, and it was like this big fat Rolodex. And
Oh
anyway,
my
so
gosh.
it was a running joke in the household for a year there
I
with
think that, oh, I'd love to
with
see,
their
I'd
boys.
love to see that role. I think that would be incredibly interesting. So, that's part of the entrepreneurial journey sometimes, right? But as as you were going through all of those experiences, of course, you were learning as you go through and you throw things
Mhm.
at the wall and see what sticks and learn. Um, as you sit here today, which of those experiences do you think might have had a significant impact on who you've become now?
Hmm. Well, it's I don't know that one really stands out.
Okay.
I think really is probably the ones that impact the most are the amazing wins
Mm.
that, as well as the catastrophic failures, like those two extremes. The stuff in the middle, I can't remember. It is
Right.
just,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
those two extremes are the ones that really, I think, forge who I am today.
Would
So,
you be willing to share one of those extremes with us?
oh, sure. So let's say prior to going into construction, one of the companies I uh, founded was in alternate energy back in the early 90s, before it was really called alternate energy.
Yeah.
But it was just this following a path of things that was in the started in the forestry industry in northern
Mhm.
BC, uh, eliminating waste for the forest sector. They would end up with these big hog piles, which are just
Mm.
chips of wood that get so big they start on fire by themselves, and they're dangerous, so they need to get rid of them. But they were huge. So we developed a methodology to be able to incinerate them and meet the environmental
Mhm.
impacts, and that led to more and more development and R&D. And before you knew it, we were doing uh, had patents and business from here to United States and Australia, developing and selling these applications for industrial use,
Okay.
and displacing gas and working on converting it into electricity using turbine engines from Arenda turbines, which was used in the jets in early days in Canada. Anyway, so it was a going concern, and the Toronto Stock Exchange was soliciting us
Mm.
to join. So I thought I would bring in people that have been there and done that, because I was
Yeah.
a young 30 uh, entrepreneur, kind of just scrapping this together. And so I brought in this the seasoned smart people, they put an investment in. Before I knew it, I lost control of the company,
Mm.
and and they they so I ended up losing control, losing my job, and then they took the patents and closed all the business and pulled the patents into another company and went and did their own thing. So that was a lesson in I guess just in my own naivety and in going into a field, right, into a category that I don't know about,
Mm-hmm.
and just trusting.
Mm.
So it could have turned out well, of course, but that was what one example. So I think of that once in a while when now I'm looking at whether it's private or companies that are smaller companies but are that are public, where we're looking at doing contracts and those kind of things.
Yeah.
I'm 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 asking better questions and doing more more in-depth background researches and stuff like that on the people that I work with.
Mm.
So that was a
Yeah.
takeaway there. So
Huge.
um, so on the bad side, I think on the amazing side, let's see, there would be well, I think the Alair story is probably an amazing one where uh, through I'll talk about how I got there in a minute, but once working with the founder, with Blair, as he got on to developing the idea of providing the services in a real professional way for custom home builders and builders, which is really a fragmented industry and mostly small scale. Uh, it I was engaged by that idea and
Mm-hmm.
uh, let him know that I would be resigning my working with him and moving to Vancouver to start up that division of Alair Homes.
Beautiful.
And it's funny because one of the chief operating officer there now jokes with me once in a while, going, back then, uh, to watch me go, well, let's just move to a city we've never lived in and have no business and just start. Just go make
Yeah.
sales, just go make some money,
Yeah.
just go get it started. And we've established that with 8 offices here now in the Lower Mainland.
Amazing.
So to me it was normal. To others watching, it was, oh my God, what is he? Like, I
Yeah.
hope I hope he makes it right.
I love this. You're pulling on a couple of things that I think is just so important for all entrepreneurs, but you're really talking about who you are. It's just normal. This was normal for me. You talked about,
Mhm.
as I've known you, but you talked about services offered in a professional way. That's talking about the quality of the client experience or customer experiences, if you will,
Mm,
right? The professionalism of something that had until then not necessarily had it. You said, scrap together, I think is something that you said.
yeah.
And then you also talked about scale, right? The ability to scale that professional service in a meaningful way. So what you were really leaning into was things that felt not risky to you, but to others, they may have appeared that way. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
accurate?
right. Yeah, that's accurate. I think my I have an aura ring, right, for because health and
Yeah,
longevity is
yeah,
one of my pillars, and
it is.
that and family and love, and then
Oh,
wealth and health. But it tells me, I'm just bringing that up because uh, just this morning I was looking at it as I had a late night working, and it
oh,
tells me, hey, you have a, what is it, a your body has a high recovery high recovery to the stresses in
nice.
physiologically. And I go,
Hmm.
well, that makes sense because it sort of fits with what you're just saying, right, in the entrepreneurial thing. um Anyway, that's funny. I think the quality of workmanship and that sort of commitment to that is not just myself. Obviously I have that innately in me, but the
Hmm.
culture that uh, the company Alair has built and become has a real
Hmm.
strong culture towards that. So I've been fortunate to be in an environment of people that believe that, and then talk about and develop ways to actually deliver on it. And
Hmm.
delivering on it is really the key, of course, right? Uh,
Yeah, it's one thing
but it
to,
belongs with that belief, and I think self identity, right? If you think if I because I just view myself as that person that has that integrity, and
mm,
so therefore my actions follow it. And sometimes, I fall down, or I don't do something well, or I let somebody down. But it's you know, making it as few and far in between as possible.
Yeah. So for the people who are listening and joining us today, the audience, like when you're talking about your identity, I'm actually curious about that, because has this always been your identity, or is this identity developed in terms of your commitment to delivering on your promises and standing
Mm.
for solid workmanship? Was that with you when you were in your 30s as it is today, or has something shifted?
No, I think there's been a general shift over the decades. To be honest, when I look back, it was a lot more driven by succeeding on starting making money, paying the rent, becoming rich. Yeah, that was kind of like the focus, right? Um, and now it's not so much that, even though more of that is happening.
Isn't that funny?
It's
Yeah.
it's a lot more of the other things in life as well, which is family and health and those things. But even
Mhm.
in Alair now, the recently we had, as many people in British Columbia know from your listeners in BC, there's a code change from the provincial government, Bill 44, to allow multiplex units, 4 and 8, 6 units, to be built on a single family home. Or,
Mhm.
what used to be just only you could build a house on it. Now you could build 3 or 4 homes on it.
Mhm.
And initially I thought about that. Well, that's great. We'll be a developer. We'll raise some money and we'll go buy some lots and we'll do that. That makes sense. There's money to be made there. But as I dug into it more, realized that the real winners in that whole scenario is really the homeowners, because now they have a new asset class they're sitting on, where what was worth, a single house is now potentially worth 3 or 4 houses, as long as they can execute on it. And I'm telling that because to me, it's like, instead of just going after, oh, let's build some stuff and make some money, it's like, let's help people
Mm.
access this new wealth that's in their potentially in their lives. And that has such a heartfelt purpose for me, that it's way more rewarding doing that, and than taking a direction just to make money out doing it.
Yeah.
If I'm being
I
clear there. So I think that's the change in my life over the decades, is that I lean towards that a lot more now, where there's, the purpose needs to be heartfelt, for my, and in sync with my values, which is tied to my
right.
identity.
Yeah. Um, when you're saying heartfelt purpose, how
Mm.
does that how does that affect how you lead and the opportunities you pursue? Like, where does this show up for you primarily now, even as compared with again before?
Well, I think, like, for instance, when I'm talking with homeowners in my current, business, I'm focused solely on, is this good for them? Does this make sense for them? We'll run a financial performer and all these things, but it's really from the point of view of, why would they even want to do it? Is it for
Nice.
intergeneration, like,
Hmm.
intergenerational living, or passing on wealth to the kids, or just to literally make some money and go do whatever they want in life with that extra freedom? Whatever that is important to them, and I'll
Hmm.
structure everything around that to support that. Or if there's some reason that they can't do it, I'll be we don't try make it happen if it's too risky or something, like, well. So I think it just shows up that way, where it's about creating this outsized value for someone else, that, that but I've heard it before, and it seemed like a cliche when I hear it in different places, right? It's like the money comes, but it is true. But I've also learned that it's I think it's being an expert in something, whatever that is for each one of us, right?
Hmm.
So this happens to be construction, and business deals around construction happens to be an expertise of mine. So when
Right.
all this zoning change happened, I could put those dots together and know
Yeah.
how I could deliver in it. And
Yeah.
that's, unique to me. And but I wouldn't have, without the expertise, I couldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be excited about it. I wouldn't even see it.
Oh,
So
I
I
love
think that's
that.
true for all of us as a
Right.
business people, or owners, or entrepreneurs.
Hmm. Expertise and excitement do tend to come together in a large way. We tend to feel good at what we're good at. Um,
Yeah.
tend to like that, so we tend to do more of it. So sometimes people say, what's my passion? I can't figure out my passion. I'm like, well, sometimes you just got to get good at something and your passion will show up. because the more you
Right.
know, the more you want to know, and the better you feel about your expertise. That's a curious thing, which actually takes me back. Um, why? So you were in alternate energy way back, and then, through the journey of your entrepreneurial ventures, you landed into real estate or construction, if you will. What
Mhm.
is it, or what was it then? Was it, you talked about Blair, the founder, and the values of Alair, and that they aligned with you, and so you kind of jumped right in. Was it specifically related to more of the values, David, or did it have something about construction that was interesting to you as well? Was there something there that was pulling you? Curious.
You mean that I went into this industry at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So,
What captured your attention?
well, both my wife and I grew up around construction. Like her dad was actually an old time
Okay.
carpenter that would build
Nice.
people's houses, and he'd come home and build the cabinets in this shop and go put them in. And she's uh one of four sisters, and so she was the sort of the one that wanted to go out in the shop and help him clean up put his tools away,
Yeah.
and so she
Okay.
remembers the smell of sawdust and that kind of thing. That's a fond
Mm-hmm.
memory for her.
Oh,
And I had carpentry, and my uncle was the same kind of person. And
okay.
anyway, so it was just around us when we grew up. And uh, over the years, in the earlier days, when I'm doing some of these other businesses and some international trade that took me to topically places like Ukraine and other places around the world, um, I was away and our kids were young. And so as one business closed, and what am I going to create next?
Mm-hmm.
My wife goes, well, because we had built a couple houses for ourselves by then for us and our kids.
Yeah.
And rather than buying, because I could general manage it and felt comfortable just, hiring everybody and coordinating it. And she was really great at designing and all that. So we just made a natural team.
No
So
kidding.
she goes, let's just do that. And then you don't have to, be away as much. And I said, okay, well, let's just do that for a while. And it was really plan B in my mind, which, is now what, 25 or 26 years ago. And so somewhere I think recently I go, hey, this is not plan B anymore.
Yeah. That's
But
amazing. Well,
anyway, so that's how that started. And we just I literally, there was our house was in a subdivision, a golf course, and across the street was a empty property on the backing onto one of the greens. And the owner of it was just down the street, which we knew. So I just went to them and said, hey, listen, well, you've got that lot. Let's just joint venture. I'll put the financing together and build a spec house. We'll sell it. You'll get your full money for your property, and I'll make some money, and we'll try to make some profit and split some extra. And they said, okay. And so that was my first, build that way. And then that one thing led to another. And before you knew it, we were a major builder in large subdivisions and all these kind of things. So that's how
Okay.
it just kept going.
Beautiful. I love it. There's a couple, courage for sure, taking that leap and just jumping into it. But also back when you were talking about the alternate energy piece,
Mm-hmm.
you said it's a category that you didn't know about. And here you are thriving in a category that you already understood to some level with a partner who was
Mm,
a big part of that. Right from the very beginning, you had something
for
that you
sure.
shared. Very, very interesting. I mean, not everybody's so fortunate to have a partner in their life partner be that person, but certainly as a business partner for sure.
Yeah, yeah. We
Right.
worked together for the first 10 years, I think, or 9 or 10 years, where she ran the whole interior design department. We had, uh, architectural technicians working for us designing the houses. So she would guide that whole process, and I would manage the sales and the operations.
Yeah,
So that's how we
beautiful.
started. Yeah.
Amazing. So today, as you know, I focus on differentiation, and I'm thinking there's so much differentiation inside this conversation, so I'm getting all excited. But nonetheless, I'm thinking about when we're looking at differentiating our offer, what you did as creating North America's fastest growing franchise, that doesn't just happen through, activity and sales. That happens through so much differentiation and creating brand awareness and being authentic and whatnot. A lot of the things we're talking about today. How do you bring differentiation into either Alair as an overarching brand, or even for your team as you're leading them?
Mhm.
How do you see it?
Yeah, those are good questions. I think just to clarify, Alair is the largest, fastest growing franchise in construction,
Sorry,
not just
yes.
franchise. Yeah.
Well, thank you. There's your
And
transparency and authenticity coming
mhm.
through. So
and it
thank you
does
for
have, it
clarifying.
does have the largest footprint of a
Yeah.
custom group of custom home builders in the world.
Yeah,
It is
beautiful.
significant. Um, so the differentiation, like in it, it's interesting. I think that evolves as well because in the early days we thought the differentiation was there's a group of us, we're using a common software, we're doing these things that we never really had on our own because they're too big of an investment of time and money to do when you're
Right.
running your own construction company.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought that was a differentiation, and it it was helpful, but it was just a tool. And then
Mm,
along the way, um, it just attracted better and better as it grew. It attracted more people that even came from outside the industry to help
mm,
lead the core leadership team,
mhm,
and that's where insights and then trademark things, statements like "living better starts here" came from, to
mhm.
try and embody what is it that we're actually doing. Sure, we build great houses. There's other builders that build great houses, of course, right?
Right.
So is it just the house, or is it about the experience? And we zoned in on, well, it's about the experience, and what does that really mean? How do we provide surprise and delight for our clients along the way? It
Yeah.
and it's really a boring answer because it starts with, don't do things that create risk and miss simple stuff like communication. Well, okay, what does that mean? How often is it? What form is it in? How is it delivered?
Mhm.
What's the tone? Like, what are you saying? What information are you giving? Is it useful, or is it just, like, there's
Yeah.
all, and it always just continues to develop. I think it just is with the commitment to where you want to go,
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
and then the pathway, shows itself to that, to support that commitment. And so Alair, as a group, the leadership as well as the builders that it attracts has a commitment to that idea of living better starts here for everybody, the employees, the clients, the process,
Right.
the experience, all those things. And then we learn from each other faster. uh, Whoever makes mistakes can share them in a safe way, and then we all grow faster from that. So that was part of the sauce there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, living better starts here as the overarching North Star or general
Mhm.
theme around which you rally. It's such a strong statement because it speaks, as you said, it speaks through all the channels, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just stand for the brand per se out there in the market and the messaging, but it's also the communication in the team and how you're structuring the surprise and delight for your customers and
Mhm.
clients, right? As
Yeah. And it's like, we talk about that 5 year span. Like, I go back 5 years, I would have never imagined that I would be, my franchise in Vancouver would be solely focused on multiplex, that construction now,
right.
because we were building and winning awards for houses and large renovations and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a little hard to differentiate in because there's so many builders doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But as a group,
commoditized. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So it's but that this whole sector allows a differentiation, but it's a specialization. I just happen to have that combined skill set on the business side because it's not just construction.
Right.
Of course, you got to know how to do that more complicated build, but it's about the structuring the whole, all the things around it. Like, is it the right architect for that product? Who is the Do you have the financing arranged for the construction of it? It's a very special kind of financing that honestly the banks and credit unions aren't really doing well. So you need to
Mm.
find a way to deliver that. Otherwise, you can't even do it. And for a homeowner, and you sell some units, that's a taxable event. Well, how does a person structure their affairs so that they pay the minimum tax? And how do you sell these things? The realtor really becomes a specialized consultant at the beginning, and needs to know how to market it, and it towards the end. So this whole group of people create an ecosystem that differentiates what we're
Mm-hmm.
delivering. It's not, building is part of it, but that's just one part of it.
Yeah,
Uh, so
yeah. And again, you're coming right back to, I'm going to come back to living better starts here. And also this idea of surprise and delight. You talked about earlier, the why behind what you're doing for clients, that heart forward or
mhm.
heartfelt initiative for them. And what I'm hearing over and over and over again from you is this idea that everything that you do is oriented towards creating an outcome that is aligned with what they want, right? As easy as possible. So you've spoken about execution, creating a smooth client experience or the journey to the final result through the expertise that you're bringing in and whatnot. How is that? Am I feeding back what you're articulating, or would you like to nuance that further for us?
Oh no, you're awesome at feeding back what you're hearing. That's your expertise for sure. Uh, no, it's totally true. The I think about, well, why is that for me? Why is this meaningful for me to make that difference in people's, to help be part of removing the friction points and creating a structure where people, uh, a realtor friend of mine dubbed it, the rise of the civilian developer, where I think that's kind of catchy. And but
sounds like a blog post.
Yeah, I know, right? So that
article,
people can just plug and play, but you got to have that real institutional level capability for them to plug into to exercise a multiplex. But I think when I look back, I think just over my history of entrepreneuring and all the starts and failures along the way and all that, looking for security financially and through that process, especially in the early days. I think this like gift that we have from an active government of all things is really something that's unique. I think it's a once in a kind of a lifetime, thing that happens. So when I go, wow, people can, like, so many people, like the performers we're running, can make over $1 million in this transaction. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty compelling and meaningful to a lot of people in what that can do in their lives. And I go, man, if we had that in our lives back when, that would have been handy.
Life-changing events.
Right.
I can see, just in your eyes, you light up like a firecracker when you start. I can see you're visioning the idea as we're talking, as you're talking it out, I can see it. But so as I'm thinking about this now, I'm thinking, okay, David, like, where do you see this going? What do the next 5 years look like for you and maybe Alair?
Yeah. Okay. We'll put it on film here and I'll come back to it and go see how wrong I am.
Well, we know it's going to be different anyway, but as we vision it, as you said.
Well, interesting. Like I've been giving that some thought because unlike other decades, and as I look back, this decade going forward has a lot of things in play that are exterior to my own stuff, right? So AI, for instance, right? Global repositioning on government's politics, just how all of that is sorting out. And like I was listening to the president of, the past CEO of Google, and he's going, imagine this: you have an AI agent or agents that, an agent, for those that may not have heard of this yet, are AI, software that can do something for you. Like you can tell it to go to my Instagram account and put this video that you and I are doing on it, and it actually goes and turns the things on and actually executes it, right? So imagine saying to it in normal language, hey, take what's that Chinese deep or TikTok, for instance. Hey, go copy TikTok, copy the whole thing and put it in my somewhere and make it do X, Y, and Z for me and get my message, my thing out. And it actually goes and does that.
Right.
Can you, like, we're not that far off from those kinds of things. Imagine construction sites with specialized robots actually on the site that are doing specific acts. And right now we have that. Like we're using some panelized wall systems that are literally made by robots in an off-site location that we bring to the site, right? And so it's showing up slowly, but there's going to be impacts that are hard to predict, right? We have this effect where that American dream or Canadian dream of that we lived through, where you had maybe a 2-to-1 ratio of cost of housing to the annual income, and you could buy a house, and you could create, have it for a period of years, and can have some wealth there, and that was like a path for many people. that's not a path anymore because it's like 12 to 1 now.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
and
I mean, you're very comfortable with unpredictability and the unknown, as we've already seen
mhm.
today. I'm curious about how you're feeling about what you're seeing coming in the future with that, because
uh,
we have lots of unknowns.
yeah, well, I'm an optimist, so I'm excited. It's sort of like instead of being, the
Mm.
phrase your cup's half full or
Hmm.
half empty or half full. For me, it's like, is it half full or is it overflowing? Like it's just on the other side of it. All of the things we're talking about have that potential, like for
Hmm.
health, for cognitive, capability, for life, for enjoyment. And there's obviously dark sides to everything too, right? So it's really however an individual is, they'll amplify these technologies will just amplify that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we have, a greater responsibility to manage what we give our attention to. So I'm constantly
Mm.
retraining my algorithms because I'll watch something and then it starts to veer off into left field. And all of a sudden I get this, I'm going this. The world looks crazy because I'm just seeing one narrow thing that's kind of getting amplified. But it's like,
Amazing. Yeah.
um,
Retraining your algorithms, that's such you just kind of slid that in there, but it's a very strong strategy for maintaining perspective,
mhm.
and allowing you to have that broad scope that's so important for you as a business leader as well, right?
Yeah, there's a broad because it is kind of, yeah, I think so. I think there's a responsibility to ourselves and to, particularly if we are in leadership positions,
Hmm.
to have a bit of a balanced view, which means that we need to look at openly at things we don't agree with or
Right.
things that seem insanely crazy, but give it a minute.
A lot of
Like,
things that have seemed insanely crazy are now really happening.
right?
Not so crazy.
I mean, and even as I think about our construction methodologies, as we scale up more with multiplex, like we can't actually even build it the way that the old school way of building it. We call it stick framing and this kind of thing. You can't, like, it's that's not really transferable. So things
Right.
have to be actually done differently.
Hmm.
The logistics of deliveries, how things are put together, where they're put together,
Yeah.
material science is developing. Like all, it's kind of like showing up in so many places. It's not just on our smartphones, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You mentioned again doing things differently, and what you actually differentiated earlier was the tool is not the same as the execution, right? When we're differentiating, because
Mm-hmm.
a tool isn't necessarily something that is valuable and differentiated for any period of time because it can be duplicated. So what I've heard from you consistently again is this idea that you're differentiating based on things that are hard to copy, right? Which is around service,
Yeah.
experience, vision, direction that you're taking, even being led by the design of your living better starts here,
Right.
right?
It's
Just
actually a good
designing
point.
around that. Hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Because if you're, like if an entrepreneur has a design, like has wants to approach something business wise and create maximum value and have an exit strategy, like right off the bat, versus a long-term hold
right.
and revenue plan, those are two different paths to execute on, right? One is you're gonna really want to develop intellectual property and put IP in
Yeah.
there and systems and processes to create more value in the company. That's going to be sellable. You need to have the systems and the people in place, like probably 35 or more people in the company doing key
Hmm.
roles so that it's a saleable entity.
Hmm.
Whereas, if you're building something for a long-term revenue, you might do the same things, but you don't have to. You'll develop it differently. So it starts with knowing who that what that what you want that business to look like, and how does that fit, your image, your self identity of yourself at that future point. Is that in the Yeah. So I think that's for sure part of it.
Amazing. So you said identity again, you brought it up. So I just want to circle back to that. As you see your own identity, do you see your identity differently in the future than you do today, than you're experiencing today? Is it changing?
It's kind of a trick question because
It is.
the answer is yes. But when I, like, even this morning, I was going out to the end of the month and to 3 months from now, which is a short time frame,
Yeah.
but it's still the future, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, so who is that guy and what's the experience? What's my new normal?
Nice.
And I'm going, well, here's the things that how I want to feel and how I'm seeing myself, with the people I love and with the in my business and all these things. And so you go, so when I imagine that, it becomes, and I give myself, a minute to do that, it becomes the new normal. It sinks into me. And I go, well, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is the thing, my goal. It feels like, oh, that's normal. That's the new normal. But it's not actually here in a physical yet, but it feels like the new normal already. And then lo and behold, things start to happen that align with that, because that's, of course, that's who I am.
Right.
So it's a weird thing. It's like you're never different than your identity, regardless if you're thinking of it in the future, as long as you're connecting with it. If you're not connecting with it, then it's not actually your identity. And you can know what your identity is by looking at what what the actions are. And I do that and go, well, what am I actually committed to? Am I committed? Like if I look at health, am I actually committed to taking, measuring and understanding what supplements I'm taking and doing the exercising and eating well? Or am I enjoying, too many drinks on the Thursday evening and ruining my sleep? What am I actually committed to? So that's my actual identity.
And your Aura ring keeps you accountable to that. At least to the too many drinks on the Thursday night.
Right,
anyway.
right. It's like,
It'll tell you
that
the next
explains
day.
it, right?
You had a little too much fun last night, David.
That's right.
But beautiful. So as you're thinking about Alair and leading forward, where would you like to see Alair in the next few years? Yeah.
Well, Alair, the larger Alair, is on a trajectory that has, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 120, leaders in it, as well as the the core leadership team. So regardless of any individual, that group of people are going where it's going, and you can see that. So that's power in that.
Scale.
I mean, for myself, I'm looking at creating an environment and building my franchise unit to a scale that's actually quite large. And then so it's self-managing attracts the high caliber people. We've heard the saying who, not how, so it creates the right who's, that because it's exciting and large enough to be part of, so that it creates that sort of self-managing company for me to be still involved with on a directional basis, but not on a daily work basis. And so I have more freedom of time and place to go create other things and spend more time with grandkids and, those kind of things.
Exactly. And you and your wife just moved across the country to be closer to your family and your children, right? Your grandchildren.
That's right,
yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
How's that been for you as you've made that shift?
Well, it's easy to enjoy it with the family, with the kids and all that. And then when I get back on the plane to go back across the country for in-person meetings, I'm going, holy smokes, it's a bit of a jog, right? And the country's so different from one side to the other. We've never been over to Atlantic Canada before, so it's really a contrast to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And so but it's great seeing more of the country and feeling more connected to what Canada actually is.
It's a beautiful country. Thank you so much. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, David, that you would like to share with us today that you think might be something that would be inspiring, or something that you would like to summarize with?
Well, let's see. I think that philosophically, just whatever we do or my experience anyway, I think whatever I do in business and life is just, there's no differentiation really. It's all the collage of who I am. So it's I think it's neat to I have three pillars that create my values, and that end up, that my decisions and choices get made from there. So it's wealth, health, and love. So it's like, because when I think of any of those three pillars, if we pull one away, or one's like, if you're really sick, then the other stuff doesn't, it's like the mirror. If you don't have love, then everything else feels empty. If you don't have anyway, so that's my take on it, is having, and those are mine, and everybody has their own individual ones.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's power in three. So thank you for providing it that way. I like to call it the three-legged stool.
Right.
Right. And they're all connected. If one isn't thriving, the others are not either.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
we like to say, wealth, health, and love, beautiful pillars upon which to build the next many years of your future. So thank you so much. The things I took away from today, I've just really enjoyed always. I enjoy hearing the scale and the vision that you have, and really appreciate the depth to which you have, as you said, not differentiated within yourself. You know, there's no differentiation within yourself, meaning that you are fully expressing in your authentic self, and you're not pulling off some random thing that is no longer aligned or doesn't align with who you
Mm.
are. And that's something that, you know, we all work toward, but that's really, really stood out from today as we talked about your pillars and talked about how Alair, first, how you were attracted to join, and then secondly, how you've led your team and created what you've created today. So it's beautiful
Yeah.
with the franchise. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. I mean, it's been fun just chatting with you and talking about these things. And you ask such insightful questions. Makes me think. I go, wait a minute, I got to think about that.
Okay, good. That's beautiful. Well, thank you for inspiring us. And I just want to be grateful for the time that you spent with us today.